welcome back to the What the Hype Water Cooler. Today we are reacting to Season 4, Episode 5 of The Boys. I'm Laura. I'm here in the studio with Eric. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to be back.
Yeah, well, we see somebody come back in this episode, and I thought that would be a good place for us to start.
All right.
with Hugh and Hugh Sr., and the way that plays out over this whole episode. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, you yourself have been saying they wouldn't just pay Simon Pegg to come and lay in a bed.
Yeah.
So now we know kind of what their plans were. And to me, this whole experience, it was heartwarming. At the very least, you get to have a single other moment with your father. That Huey's story, he obviously has to go through a lot, and his mom. But they do get more time with him. Unfortunately, there are casualties.
Several that come as a
Several
result.
more casualties. And I don't think the 1 second they show of one of those casualties trying to pick up a girl indicates that person deserved the fate that they got, or, at all.
No.
The show has continued to treat the loss of life as set decoration, and not the tragic thing that it in real life is. But yes, speaking of about Hugh Campbell Sr., I thought it was excellent. It was really, really excellent, and it furthers the theme that V really does ruin is like everything. It's this whole show has kind of been about, the superheroes are the way they are because of V. And that said, it doesn't make them horrible people. It just amplifies. And there's always a catch with V, has been kind of an ongoing thing.
Yeah, and we see a lot thematically about the effects of Compound V throughout this episode. I mean, even just thinking about what we see at Newman's lab, which she's basically just used Stan Edgar's old farm to turn it into this biological lab to test the virus on that would incapacitate or kill Soups. And we see this moment with the bunny that Butcher releases from the lab that had the Compound V IV in it, and he later encounters it in the woods. Weird ass tumor arms break out of that bunny. They're highly reminiscent of whatever we see kind of wriggling around in Butcher's body.
Mm-hmm.
And Butcher in this moment, he's kind of staring down the barrel of his own mortality when he has to take that bunny out,
Yeah, it's mercy killing. And I think he's realizing that he too should be mercy killed.
Yeah.
But there's so much to do in this episode, like you said. Stan Edgar's back. Giancarlo Esposito, or Giancarlo Esposito. So good. I didn't expect, I didn't know to expect a scene or an episode in this series where the big bad, who's kind of in jail, gets released on house arrest to go mess with the main characters for an episode, and then at the end is just put back. Like, that is a brilliant trope that happens in some of the best like TV series too. Is like, oh, this guy you thought was gone is going to come back, mess with a few people's heads, and then go right back in. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. He's amazing.
Yeah,
He's
but he doesn't,
amazing.
does he? Right? Because Victoria comes and gets him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we don't know now that he's out of the bog. How do you handle that? The uneasy sort of relationship between he and Victoria is definitely like, it feels like Endgame type stuff.
Yeah.
But it does seem like everyone's aligned trying to stop Homelander. That seems to be the major kind of purpose for it all.
Yeah. But I don't know. At this point, it kind of feels like the team is all over the place. Butcher is Team Virus, and, he and Kessler have kidnapped Samir.
Right.
To basically force him to do what he was doing at Godolkin. And we'll come back to that and Gen V in a moment here, because I have some thoughts on the way that showed up in this episode.
I'm so glad you have thoughts. I
Yes.
kind of have thoughts too.
Same. But it really just feels like they're establishing the team being like very stratified at this point. Everybody's dealing with their own stuff. Frenchie is turning himself in. Hugh just had to let go of his father. Starlight is having her projectile dysfunction, which I thought was like one of the funniest lines of the episode. And, Newman is primarily focused on, one, trying to protect her child, which I guess we can ask ourselves, did she really take steps to protect her child, since we're seeing the effects of shooting at V when you're not a baby? But then secondarily, she's trying to control Homelander. But I feel like with her, she's like a moving target. I never totally know where she stands. So let's talk about the Gen V stuff.
V-52 Expo
Yeah.
is a brilliant, funny,
Oh, that was great.
phases 9 through 17, and you look at the slate of all the videos, it's like, oh, this is straight out of real life here. This feels
Yeah.
like exactly what you'd get at D50. Oh my God. Isn't it D52?
It's D23, I
D23,
think.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I need a breather. I just realized that. Yes. I love when you can recognize what something is pulled from. And yet, the world of movie making is so substanceless, so shallow, and so idea bankrupt that this kind of slate of films to come out, all featuring Vought's superheroes, seems perfectly reasonable. That's not a stretch at all. This isn't as like I would, and reading some of those titles, I had to pause, zoom in. I would watch some of those movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was a total send up of like Disney and the MCU. They literally call it the Vought Cinematic Universe. And
Yeah.
that whole screen where they're laying out the phases, it was exactly what it looks like when Disney is doing that with Marvel.
Yeah, like little logos for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are named the same. There's like Civil War and some other ones. You know what's interesting about that? Of all those titles, I didn't really notice any for Sage.
Interesting. I didn't, I will admit that I did not take the time to zoom in on any of those, but now I feel
Ah,
like I need to go back and check it out,
yeah.
because there could be some Easter eggs there. There could be some hints about what's to come as
Mhm.
well. This show really loves to do that. But I will say that Firecracker got one, but both Sage and Firecracker are original characters to the show. So I'm very curious to see, like, are they going to integrate them into the mythos somehow?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it makes you wonder what's going to happen to Sage. I mean, it's great and all if you're the smartest human on the planet, but she has no other powers. So in that way, as soon as she is no longer useful to Homelander,
Mhm.
she's vulnerable.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because she started off this season wanting to be the sort of the silent sister, and wanted to not be involved. And Homelander's the one that actually brought her into the Seven. So somehow she's gotten out of the baggage of having all these movies made after you, which is good for her. But yeah, you do wonder how she's going to be around for a while. But yes, Gen V. When I think of all the wonderful things that happened on that little show.
Yep.
I was not expecting them to introduce Kate and Sam from the show and have them on stage doing like a presentation of sorts, only to cut away and focus on everyone else and everything else going on and completely make a big deal out of these characters on stage. They're on the show. Holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. Sidelined. You don't know
Yeah.
what was said.
I have to say, I watched this and I was like, okay, I can see exactly what they've done here. They've lifted just enough information from Gen V to insert in this show so that the virus storyline is not confusing to people who didn't watch Gen V. And they also draw in the recap before the episode, they dropped some scenes from Gen V as well so
Yep.
that people would
Yep.
have that. But I gotta say, if I had not watched Gen V, and I was only watching The Boys, this episode would have felt random in that regard, because I would have
Mm.
been like, who are these people? Like, oh, okay, they're just telling me about the plot of this other show without actually showing the implications of it. I think the fact that someone who didn't watch Gen V wouldn't know how nefarious Kate is.
No, she seems just like
Yeah,
some Barbie doll that's like
right.
not fully. There's something a little off with her, but even later at Seven Tower, you get like, I don't know, she's just showing fealty to Homelander, but
Yeah.
you
And she's
there's
terrifying.
well, she's terrifying if you know.
Yeah.
If you know what she's capable of, she's terrifying, and I like it in a little way, but Gen V's not getting the respect they deserve. These characters are just getting
No.
shot. Like it feels like edging or something. It's like, give me the Gen V people, not
I
in a good way
know.
either. Just come on, let me enjoy these other characters.
I know.
Um,
They better break the rest of them out. Like
we got to
that
figure out where they
has to be
are.
coming.
Well, because you're right, because the episode. I wouldn't have seen it this way until we started talking. But yeah, bare minimum was done to the Butcher at the beginning is like, I want to Godolkin. It's like, okay, there was a virus there. Nice, okay, and then now we move on to like the farm. But yeah, I hopefully the show will find a way to actually like straight up cut away and not just have them in the background of the episode, because I don't know, have they announced the second season of Gen V? Because if not, I really want to see those characters' storylines continue.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised
Mm.
if they were going to have another one, especially since they've established that Kate and Sam are in tight with the Seven and Vought, and we know that the other Guardians of Godolkin are very much not. So I feel like they're setting up for some kind of conflict to happen there. I don't know if they're going to close that loop in the boys, because we know there's a whole insurrection storyline that's about to come this season. They've been really heavy-handed about January 6th and the certification of the election. We also know in the comics there is a whole Soups insurrection arc that happens that's pretty different than where this is going, but I think substantively it's going to hit some of the same high notes, and a lot of people are going to die. So that's my prediction for the finale of this season.
Okay.
Um but yeah,
Well, to that end,
I don't know if they're going to wrap the Gen V stuff into that though.
yeah, I guess it wouldn't make sense. So okay, we'll see how the virus comes to play as sort of Gen V's legacy. We'll see what it has to do. I want to ask before we talk about the farm, because the farm is easily the most fun to
Oh my
talk about.
gosh. So good.
Before we talk about that, Homelander, and he has sort of an announcement for everyone at Seven Tower, and he says, "You all are going to have to commit horrible acts because the world needs this to heal." He said the world is broken, and we alone can fix it. It seems like, I mean, he's psyching everyone up to commit horrible violence for the greater good.
Mhm.
But his attitude on the country is broken and can't be fixed reminds me a lot of Trump in the debate the other day.
Oh yeah.
Sort of just that overwhelmingly negative outlook, and coupled with words that excite him like violence and destruction and all this kind of stuff. It hit way too close to me. I watched the episode right after watching the debate, so
Oh god.
I was freaking the hell out. But what's going on with Homelander, and is it appealing to think of a nation that's so far gone that you can like, yeah, we're taking it into our own hands? Like, it's just completely, for me, not where patriotism comes from.
Oh god,
Uh,
no.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that just goes back to what we were talking about last week when it comes to the people who are either not realizing or just now realizing that Homelander is not the hero, and that the show is making fun of
Mhm.
people who think things like that. Um, but I think it also serves like a narrative purpose too, to see where Homelander is, because last episode he basically confronted his childhood trauma and he killed it. He literally killed what he sees as, and it is the source of his childhood trauma. So he has now let go of that need to be loved and that need for people to not be disappointed in him. He doesn't care anymore. And that's the terrifying thing. That's been the only thing that has kept Homelander kind of on a leash. And he doesn't have it anymore. So
Good
we have
point.
that. We have like the Trumpian allegories that are being made, super valid. Again, this show is not subtle.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. But yeah, it's interesting for Homelander. Little bit of Homelander and Ryan this episode. I thought that was lovely.
Yeah. Homelander's like, he's trying to be a dad, you know? He's trying to stand up for Ryan and say, use your voice, don't do the things you don't want to do. But then because he never had like the resources to learn how to be a productive father to somebody, his version of that is just it takes a left turn really quickly. They're having that great conversation in the halls of Vought where he says, no, I was proud of you for saying what you thought, and I realized I was projecting my childhood trauma onto you. I'm not going to do that
Yeah.
anymore. And then it's like, you want to stick up for people, have this production assistant beat the living hell out of the director.
And that guy sucks, but still,
Yeah.
yeah.
But did he deserve that?
No, it's the wrong
No.
lesson. It's
Yeah.
it's absolutely, because it's still Homelander's brand of correct things by force,
Yeah.
which, there's a certain extent, there's obviously a point where, and look at how easy it was for Homelander and Ryan to identify the thing that was wrong between the PA
Yeah.
and the director. They knew it doesn't take a genius to see that there's a problem there, that something is wrong, that she was being abused, and yet their correction, they overcorrect for it, or what they do, how they handle it, is wrong. It's like, no, you just need to step in, step up. You don't need to beat the ever living hell out of somebody to make your point, and just say, we won't tolerate that here, and that's it. I don't think after the fifth or sixth beating, he's gonna have learned anything differently. There's a better way to handle it.
Yeah.
But again, the
Well,
show did the Ryan loving violence kind of aspect, the camera close up to him going, and it's just, I
yeah.
know that we've been teased before about that, but I think that if Homelander successfully reprograms Ryan to see uh standing up for people as doing this, then we're kind of in trouble.
Yeah. So I feel like this is a good last little nugget of discussion for us is Ryan. Um, I'm worried about Ryan.
Really,
I'm
I'm sure you're
worried.
the only one.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think we all are, right? Because we've been watching him dance this dance of like, am I going to go full psychopath like dad, or am I going to go, the butcher route? I don't know if we're going to get to see that storyline play out. I I am concerned that they're setting Ryan up for dying.
Oh,
And I don't know if that happens this season or next season. But I mean, not that the source material terribly matters that much at this point, because the show is very much off of that. It's still taking certain thematic elements and implementing them, but like Ryan died in the comics as a baby. So like we've been off book with him for a long time. And I
yeah.
love what they've done with his character, but it makes me wonder if he's going to meet the same end in the show, or if they're going to find some way to save him.
Well, I mean, as far as I don't have a lot of stock in this virus, which we still have to talk about. But I've been seeing Ryan as the only thing that can kill Homelander. Like the only thing
Yeah.
with any reasonable, if we have any reason to hope, it's Ryan. And so if he isn't even in the picture in the comics, how does Homelander end is what I would want to know. I don't
Well,
want to know, but if he does or doesn't, but I mean, that's what I think the show has been setting up for, like, not to die, but eventually to be like pretty much the only one who's as strong as Homelander because he's his kid, and possibly more because he's got a more moral upbringing.
yeah.
Um,
I feel like there's a lot of ways they could be setting it up. Again, it's totally off comics, so like it's all speculation, but I mean, what the hell is going on with Butcher? He blacked out and killed Ezekiel. Did those weird tendril arms burst out of him and like rip Ezekiel apart? Is that what happened? Also, I feel like those bore a resemblance to the arm things that came out of Zoe's mouth
mhm.
earlier on in the season. So I'm wondering, like, is that like a compound V like side effect if you're injecting it when you're not a baby? Like,
Yeah, I do wonder about that. Seeing it in the bunny too, like little tendril type things. I was like, huh, how common is this? And
yeah,
I was excited for half a second because the science that they must get from studying these types of things must like teach them a lot about the genome that we otherwise wouldn't have. So I got like real geeky about it. I was like, wow, how does that work? I'm still treating everything, including Simon Pegg's phasing through the walls, sort of Kitty Pryde Shadowcat style, as something that would be rooted in science. That V
yeah,
gives us the ability to unlock. I don't. I That's why I hate when something seems more magic than like it could be
yeah,
science in the show. And there have been moments, but I like seeing sort of like the limitations. So, for instance, at the convention, there was a guy who could duplicate himself, but it's still one soul or one consciousness. So if you kill Prime, they
yeah.
all die. Like, I like that because it had
Same.
like a limit that you could kind of see that's it's not limited by science in some way.
Yeah, there's definitely some kind of genetic component at play because I'm glad you brought up Hugh Sr. His power was somewhat similar to Huey's when Huey was
Did you
taking
notice that?
the
I
V.
noticed that.
Yeah. So it's clearly when you take it, it's like unlocking something in your genetics that is going to be similar. I think it's weird that Zoe's power is seems to be different from Victoria's, but we also
That
haven't seen
Yeah.
that much of it, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Um but where I'm just curious, where do you see the rest of the season going? Because I can only speculate insofar as like the January 6th connection that they dropped very heavily early
Yeah.
on. Also, there's the virus stuff, which is going to come into play. What do you make of where they're taking the virus?
It's hard to imagine without a hefty time jump because presumably, look, the virus was actually something that was developed across the entire season of Gen V.
Mm-hmm.
And then across half the episodes in this season time wise. If the doctor doesn't even have a sample of it, that's years of research that you have to, even if you know exactly how it was like made, you still have to you need all that time to like make and synthesize. Plus you don't want to like just do that. You need to make it stronger because it still can't kill Homelander. So I don't see him successfully synthesizing a virus for another year and a half unless it's like what they do with Frenchie, which is just put him in a lab and he can give you any kind of gas that you want because it's like, oh, he's like, oh, I made some.
Yeah.
That time a few seasons ago where they're like, we're going to infiltrate the only lab on the East Coast
Oh,
to stop Soldier Boy,
yeah.
and then later in the season they have to make it again, and Frenchie's just like, oh, take me down to Vaught's lab, I'll cook it up. It's like, oh god, there's no internal consistency there. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll have the virus ready to deploy in 2 episodes, but I really hope not.
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
I don't
That kind of feels
see.
like something that might span into season 5.
Yeah, I don't really. But then, to answer your question, I don't even know where this season is going to end up. I don't think that enough time has been spent with the president. in order to like really, or like we don't even know like the top 5 like White House staffers to like watch them all die in a few episodes. I would think that much like we're
Yeah.
watching the people at Vought, we know like who the interns are and stuff like that, or the people at the Deep's crime analysis lab or whatever. We knew who all of them were, so that later it matters when they die. We aren't being introduced to anybody at the White House. So I'm thinking, well, they can't make the White House a satisfying battleground for the finale unless we already spent some time there.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think that. I think it's going to be the Capitol,
yeah,
because it's all about certifying the election, right?
isn't it?
Since Singer and Newman aren't in the White House yet,
Yeah,
um, so I think they're really going to lean in on the Capitol insurrection stuff.
yeah. I'll take your word
Yeah,
for it. But otherwise, I don't know where this season's going, because it's not like there are two distinct teams. It's a lot more muddy now.
yeah, it
You
really
know,
is.
and the situation that every member of the Seven is in is slightly different. As well as of the boys, like you said, it's very, very separate. So they could band together and that would be fine. But they've done that in the past. So what if this season everyone's kind of just really scattered to the wind, and some people show up, some people don't, some people are fighting something else. I mean, something the show does really well is when they split up and are in different small groups.
Yeah,
And I've certainly been surprised before by, like, I didn't expect the orgy to be a bloodbath. Ground zero for an insanely deadly event. So I'm just consistently, I'm on a ride with it. I really like
yeah.
being kind of surprised by what the show does.
Honestly, that's how I feel too, because the further along this show has gotten, the less and less you can predict based on the comics, because it's really off at this point. But like I said before, I think that actually makes it better. The comics are weird. If you think the show is weird, if you think the gratuitous violence in the show is unsettling, don't read the comics. It's so much
You're really
worse.
selling never to read the
Yeah,
comics. You guys
honestly,
like,
so not to say don't, but like you don't need to unless you're just really curious to know what are the differences between the two. But like
Okay,
it's
I'll take
yeah,
your advice. Like, it was
you're like
literally
I
like, hey,
won't.
Laura, can I get those comics from you? I'm never gonna say that,
There
because
you
now you're
go.
just like, you don't need to. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's hours of my life I get back. I'll read
one day,
Heartstopper instead.
yeah, 15 years from now though, you'll just wake up one day and they'll be out in front of your door. Feel
Oh God, it was like Laura's trying to get rid of her
Yep,
comics.
I'm the ghost of Christmas past.
I love it. I love it.
Well, thank
We got to
you.
talk about the farm.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the farm before we
Yeah.
wrap here.
Okay. Uh, it's a obviously feel bad for the animals that were subjected to
Oh,
V.
yeah.
Um, but who doesn't laugh out loud at killer sheep with crazy teeth and they fly?
That shit was so funny. I was cracking up throughout that. But again, like it brings up what we were talking about earlier with the similarities between Huey and his dad and how their powers manifested. All these sheep are presumably related. They're all on the same farm together, they're part of the same flock,
I
and
didn't even think about that.
they all have the same powers. So, I feel like the show is like really starting to drop these hints about the effects and like how V works, and that it's not just random.
Yeah. And then there are similarities to all superheroes, right? More than
Yeah.
most are bulletproof, more than
Mhm.
most heal a lot faster, more than and that's like separate from whatever your powers are. So, just they empty whole clips on these sheep and it just doesn't, it
And
doesn't
the
I mean,
chickens.
oh God. Well, I'm just laughing. It does seem like Victoria was uniquely suited to, like, she actually killed fewer of these animals than I thought, because you can just kind of blood splode them all. That was not done. Instead, they injected the last virus. Okay, it made sense. But yeah, I still think that Victoria is the one to beat in terms of just like she can be surprised, but she's really, really, really deadly. She's Homelander without like the personality defects.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah,
Which is in some ways scarier, right? Because she's a politician, so she knows how to turn on the manipulation in a
yeah.
way that doesn't feel creepy. Like when Homelander tries to manipulate people, it feels off. Newman, because Stan Edgar basically made her conceal her powers her entire upbringing, she knows how to people. So I think that makes her even scarier.
There was that moment where she says to, is it Starlight, where she's like, I'm still Nadia, but I'm also
Yeah.
Victoria.
Oof.
Yeah, it's wild. The show has cooked up many a sociopath, and it's fun to watch them run around in this universe. I gotta say, like, it's been a while since a death has actually hurt me. I feel like I'm finally officially over the violence aspect. I don't like it, but I don't like cringe as much as I used to.
Yeah. I mean, I will say Hugh Sr.'s death definitely got to me. I absolutely cried
Aw.
during
Which
that
is like,
scene.
because he's a dad you want to have.
Yeah. And ultimately, Huey did him the kindness, and he got to say goodbye, which is good. It's too bad that like tons of people had to die for that to happen.
Ah,
But it shows growth for Huey, right?
yeah, it's that reminder, like, oh yeah, this was a bad idea. Like, this is
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you? I
Butcher
have to
tried to
ask.
warn him.
Yes. Do you feel like the relationship between Huey and his mom has improved? And are you any closer to trusting his mom?
Yeah. So at this point, I don't have distrust for her. Um, it really seemed like they were trying to set it up for her
It
having
did.
had her own, supply of V that she was going to use to do the exact same thing. But turns out that she was just trying to do something nice for her son, who she doesn't really know all that well,
Mm-hmm.
and she could tell he was hurting, and she wanted to stop him from hurting.
It
Right?
seems
Like
like
I
that,
think
doesn't it?
I think it was well intentioned. I
Mhm.
don't know that there's enough time left in the season for there to be much more development to her character. It kind of feels like this this episode wrapped that particular arc of Huey's story, the family arc,
Mm.
and the story of
Mhm.
his mom and dad. Feels like that story's closed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. All that's left is for Huey and his mom to go to a Billy Joel concert. Maybe
Finally,
they'll take
30
maybe they'll
years
take a
later.
maybe they'll take a left turn and go to James Taylor instead, and I'll finally get James Taylor on this show. I was sold a false bill of goods on day one. But yeah, what I like in sort of in closing thinking about this is how the non supered people still survive.
Mhm.
Essentially you watch the boys walking literally alongside Victoria Newman and all of these crazy scenarios, and they're not powered. But they survive, and they're working alongside with Kimiko and with Starlight, and fighting the Seven. And there's always a good reason for why Homelander like doesn't just laser them in half. And partly, even if it's like he's playing with them, there's always an angle. There's always a reason why these humans still survive and are still in the game. So I really like watching the humans be put in danger but still find their way out of it, because it's increasingly inexplicable that they do just walk away from this stuff.
Yeah.
We're continually shown what they have to lose. MM's daughter and sort of his family and everything, and they're so vulnerable, but they continue to sort of navigate this crazy world with like the most crazy circumstances in it. And I like that there are still some non-powered people that we're rooting for.
Same. And we'll have to see how all of that and everything else with the virus and Homelander and Ryan and Butcher and these various factions that we have, how it all plays out over the next couple of episodes. There's only 3 more after this. It's gone
Man.
by really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has. I love doing these water coolers.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Well, we can definitely look forward to doing another one next week after episode 6, which drops on Thursday. So come back to join us in the water cooler. Don't forget to check out whatthehypepodcast.com for the links to all of our various social channels and our feed where you can find our main show. Check out our latest episode on the season 3.5 drop of Bridgerton. We have episodes coming about Heartstopper. We're going to start looking into House of the Dragon here in the next couple of weeks. So we have a lot of really exciting stuff lined up. Hope you can come join us for it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in today. And Eric and I will see you next week for our episode 6 reaction. Bye-bye.
Bye.